Hey everybody, Tim Kawakami here, the North and South podcast. I almost said another show, Dylan. That's what happens when you do four podcasts and some of them get stuck in your head. But I see your shiny face, so I know it's a North and South podcast with my co-host, the Los Angeles Times' own Dylan Hernandez, the new editorial page director of that. Oh, wait a minute, no, maybe not, but we'll see. We'll see. Give it a try out, Dylan. You'll be really good with that. Dylan, how you doing this morning? What's going on?
Well, besides the collapse of my newspaper that you kind of alluded to,
I was not
good.
suggesting that in any way. I think
well,
newspapers are the
well,
way to go.
I'm saying it.
Newspapers are just thumbs up right now. You know things are going well for newspapers. We are not laughing about this. It is just this weird thing that the media is going through. But Dylan, let's bring up sports stuff. I guess that's our mandate. California sports stuff. We are the North and South podcast. The Giants, not too long ago, we were a little late on this, but our show comes up only once a week. Buster Posey's first big move as president of baseball operations is to sign Willy Adames. Big contract. This is the shortstop for the future. He's 29 years old, was easily the best shortstop available. Giants invested a lot of money into him. I like the move just as being direct, as being fast, as being like, this is what we're going to do. We're not going to, react to teams. And I think Farhan Zaidi got too much into the reaction. Let's do the smartest thing times 17 and wait it out. And then we get these great deals. And then it kind of screws up your team. I think Giants might have overpaid for Adames a little bit, but I think it's just, I like the kind of the focusness of Posey, which I'm not surprised by, but they did it before the winter meetings. They did it, the position they most needed, as he had been uttered. They're going pitching defense. He's a guy who posts. I keep saying that with Posey. He's going to want guys who show up. 161 games last year. Just what's your take on this? Do you think there's a theme kind of developing with the Giants and Posey?
Yeah, it is kind of interesting, right? I mean, the fact that they didn't really seem to be players like in the Juan Soto stuff, like you said, right? They kind of targeted what they thought they could get, address a need. I wouldn't get too carried away with the dollar figure, just because the free agent market, as you know, is very cyclical. There are going to be years like this year where everybody seems to be getting these huge contracts, and as soon as these teams all kind of run up against the imaginary salary cap, with the CBT threshold, all of a sudden, you're going to see kind of prices come down in the next cycle, and teams can kind of adjust to that as they go along. But yeah, it is. Again, I don't know if we've quite seen a theme yet, but like you said, I think I do like the fact that they did this before the winter meetings. They kind of avoided kind of the escalating bidding war. The fact that they did it before Soto was done, I think, was kind of big, in the sense that my guess is that some teams that were in on Soto probably would have turned their attention over to Adames. And so the fact that they were able to kind of stay clear of all that mess, I do think it shows like a certain, purposefulness on the part of Buster Posey.
Yeah, I think we know the division they're in. We know the team that they're looking at. I always say two teams, Dodgers and Padres, are both more talented, a lot more talented than the Giants. Now, the Giants kind of narrowed that gap a little bit with Adames if he plays the way he has the last few years. But you kind of got to take a different tack. Like, that's why I appreciated that Posey didn't get into the Juan Soto thing, that he did not get in the bidding for Blake Snell, which I knew they were not going to be paying Blake Snell $32 million a year for long term. It's not a Posey kind of player. Like, I covered the guy. I know who the Posey kind of player. Matt Cain is a Posey kind of player. Matt Chapman, Posey kind of player. Like, there are guys out there that just really fit his idea of how you build a clubhouse. Now, you don't have to get everybody who plays like that. You're going to have some different kinds of players profiles, but it was going to start with that kind of player. I think Adames is absolutely, team captain kind of thing, a rally around kind of player. And I think you have to really target that when you're going to, especially against the Dodgers, who can just pull out the pocketbook and keep going. Now, they have not, interestingly, really at shortstop or second base. This whole Mookie Betts thing is always fascinating to me. You've got more money to spend than anybody on earth, and then you're pushing Mookie Betts into other positions. I realize he wants to play the infield, but he's really great at right field. Like, he's a dominant player in right field, and I don't get that. And they let Seager go. I understand, but they've not really paid at those positions. They've kind of forced things at those positions. How many years could Gavin Lux play short? Could he play second base? They've gone through these things. The Giants, I think, let's just go get these bedrock positions. Look where they are. Patrick Bailey, Gold Glove winner, completely fell off a hitter last season, but really solid catcher. You got Adames now at shortstop long term. Probably going to move Tyler Fitzgerald to second base. We'll see what they do there long term. Get Jung Hoo Lee in center field long term. Like that's kind of how you build it while you're going up against the Dodgers. You just kind of target your base, get really focused on the guys you want, and then try to play it out. And they're going to need other kinds of players around that, but I understand that and I respect that. And I think Farhan kind of dipped in and out of that, and it showed kind of the erraticness of it. This part, and maybe Posey won't be able to keep to it, but I think particularly aiming for the Dodgers, who might end up getting 2 or 3 more stars, haven't this year. I think that's how you play it. Do you think the Dodgers are all kind of going, whoa, what's going on over there? Or the Dodgers just kind of doing their Dodgers thing? Like they weren't really in on Soto, right? They don't feel
right.
You had to be in that race.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with the Dodgers, it's a lot of it is right. They kind of believe that the playoffs are a crapshoot, and their thing is let's just get in every year, right? And so they're just going to kind of outspend you, out depth you. Just kind of their belief is that just because of like all the attrition that happens over the course of a season, at the end of 162, they're going to end up in front, right? And I think even if you're the Giants, you probably have to be realistic about that it's going to be really tough. Like say like in 2021, what happened there where the Giants somehow beat the Dodgers for the division, that's going to be kind of tough to do. That said, you get the Dodgers in a short playoff series, kind of anything can happen. And these are 2 very distinct approaches, right? Like you mentioned, the Dodgers haven't put that much of a premium on defense over the years. You mentioned Corey Seager, but he was not a good defensive shortstop, right? Will Smith, has taken, I think this year he was a lot better. But, he kind of took time to develop as a catcher. Max Muncy at third base, again, was better this year. But, they put up with him, being below average. Freddie Freeman at this point, I don't know how good of a first baseman he really is. Like you said, with Mookie Betts, that's totally a Betts thing where, you ask me, he's probably one of the 5, he might be one of the 5 best defensive right fielders ever.
Yep.
But he wants to play shortstop. And they're kind of like, look, like we'll let him do that, and you know what? It's not going to cost us that many games over the course of a season. If we think it's going to be a problem in the playoffs, well, we'll just trade for somebody at the trade deadline like we did this past year, And so, again, I think that the best shot the Giants have is to kind of build a team that's very unlike the Dodgers in a way, right? And they're prioritizing kind of the defense there. And you know what? You play clean baseball over a series that at least gives you a shot to be in contention there if you can pitch well enough.
Yeah, and that's can they build up that pitching? And they haven't yet. They lose Snell to the Dodgers. I'm going to be continuing. I don't mean to be mean about Snell, but I'm not a Snell guy, and I just think it's another guy that Dodgers might get in the playoffs and might not have in the playoffs, and that's the whole pitching staff is guys you don't know if you're going to have for the length of the season. You probably won't have for 30 starts. Corbin Burns, much more kind of that, 32 starts a year, kind of a horse. But, has he expended most of his bullets? I don't know on that. I can't imagine the Giants paying him $35 million a year over 8 years or whatever, how many years you're going to have to go with that. Do they have another starter? And they probably need one. Roki Sasaki's just sitting there. His agent, Joel Wolf, finally could talk about it because he has been posted. Has to be signed by what? January 15 is when he has to be signed.
The 23rd.
Oh, 23rd.
Right. So 15th is when the window opens.
Can sign the 15th, 23rd, and these negotiations will happen over the next few months. The Dodgers clearly are, perceived to be the favorites, and the Giants want in on it. Everybody should want in on it. It's a suppressed economics because you can only get so much. And one thing that Wolf talked about yesterday, which I've been saying, is just because the Giants have a low number, and I don't think the Dodgers have a high number of international signing bonus that they can offer him, that's not what this is about. If this was about the most, and that's just $2 million. If this was about making the most money possibly could, he just would have waited 2 years and hit it as a 25-year-old and been able to get $30 million a year like Yamamoto did. This is not about money. It's not about $2 million. I think that's been mischaracterized or overcharacterized. He's going to pick the best spot. I don't know what that spot is, but how about the stuff about the media that Wolf talked about? That he's felt oppressed by the Japanese media. Have you sensed that? Have you seen these stories?
So I think there's a bit, kind of maybe some lost in translation here of what's gone on, right? So, I guess first we should start with the fact that like Japan is like a very orderly society, right? Like you do, you graduate from one thing, you move on to the next. After you accomplish certain things, then you move on to the next thing. There are things that you have to get done. And so, kind of the way it's been viewed in Japanese baseball is, look, you win a championship with your team, you win an MVP award, then you kind of earn the right to graduate to the major leagues, right? And Sasaki, while being extremely talented, is pretty injury prone, hasn't really had, he hasn't won a championship. He hasn't won a Sawamura Award, which is the award given to the best pitcher yet. And so, last year, when he tried to kind of force his way out of Japan, what really happened was that the public turned on him. There are these weekly tabloids that are very vicious, especially compared to here even. Right, where they write these, 5-page stories where they, quoting anonymous sources and really kind of drag you through the mud. And sure, they went after him. Now, that said, the mainstream press tended to still treat him very even-handed. I would even say that he received favorable coverage from kind of all the mainstream, sports dailies that are out there. The biggest thing was the greatest turn was the fans. And what's interesting to me, again, Sasaki's father passed away in that tsunami that really, devastated Japan in 2011. And because of that, I think the country as a whole felt very protective of him, and he was somebody that everybody kind of cheered on. And right, he became a symbol of the recovery of the Tohoku region, I think. And, so he had all this goodwill built up. And what was interesting about what Joel said was that he knew that he would face a backlash if he tried to force his way out of Japan. And that's how much this meant to him, that of accomplishing that dream of pitching in the major leagues. And so to me, as I'm what was interesting is that, Sasaki, Ohtani actually spoke to the media a lot when he was in Japan. He doesn't talk much now, but he spoke a lot back then. So we kind of had an idea more or less what type of person he was. The people around him spoke. What was interesting about yesterday was that we got for the first time probably some insight into what Sasaki is like as a person. And the guy that Joel Wolf described, he said he met Sasaki for the first time 2 years ago, that it was immediately, that he was already planning, he wanted to go to the major leagues as early as possible, right? And he enlisted Joel to help him in that process. And so this is somebody who's deliberate. This is somebody who has a plan. This is, listening to Joel describe Sasaki yesterday reminded me a lot of Ohtani, right? Is this guy, he has a vision for what his career is going to be like. Now, what is that vision? I have no idea, right? Do you really want to play with Ohtani? I mean, Ohtani is in, I think, elementary school textbooks in 5 different subjects, right? They use them for math problems and reading stuff, right? Language arts stuff. It's going to be hard to kind of trump Ohtani. Does he really view himself as that type of guy that he wants to be kind of the face of a sport? Well, in that case, he's going to have to find another place to play. What I find kind of interesting is, say from the Giants standpoint, right? You talk about Matt Cain being a Buster Posey type guy. Blake Snell not being a Buster Posey type guy. Is Roki Sasaki a Buster Posey type guy? Now, look, he's a minimum salary. He's a minimum salary guy, so he's everybody's guy.
Yeah,
right? But if you get Sasaki now, all of a sudden, right, this is going to really kind of change the direction of the organization in the sense that you're probably smart going to 6 starters at this point, right? You are completely kind of revamping this thing. And look, like obviously if you get the chance to sign the guy, you're going to do whatever, right, it takes. But things like that I think, right, when players talk to teams, they sense the enthusiasm on the part of the team to do these things, right? Like my guess is that the Dodgers have been pushing to go 6 guys, probably even 7 guys, they're going to be excited when they make that pitch to Sasaki. Look, we have all these pitchers. We have all this depth. Hey, you don't have to be the ace from day one. We don't need you to throw 200 innings. We're going to gradually develop you and make you the best pitcher in baseball, right? Whereas maybe you go to like a team without that pitching depth, all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're going to want, 180. Sure, we'll sneak in a 6th guy here and there to give you breaks and stuff. But, and I think that difference in enthusiasm can get conveyed and could make a difference in this process.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think the Giants would do that. I mean, they've got some guys. They don't have the top guys, but you could go, what if you split your starts with Jordan Hicks? He's right there. What if you split? What if what if Kyle Harrison gets one of your turn and you flip him, back and forth with him? I think they could do it. It might not be as enthusiastic as other teams. I think the Giants would do that. I think Buster Posey would say, we can figure this out. Like, if there's a 2-month span where you only need to start once every 2 weeks, we can do that. Like, I think they can do it. Obviously, the price point is the difference here. Like, you could do that you probably need to do that with Snell. They're not doing that for $32 million a year. The Dodgers can do it. Like, the Dodgers can say, give us 14 starts. Are they great 14 starts? Yes, we will do that. Giants aren't doing that. So it's all interesting. I don't know, people took it as, oh, maybe he'll go to, like, literally, I think Joel Wolf was trying to pitch small market teams. Like, hey, they're small or mid-market team. Like, go get them. Like, I always look at this from agenting, right? He's trying to position himself. So who do you think he was targeting there, Dylan? If he's trying to get smaller to mid-market teams involved in this, which I think they all are anyway, but like, who was he looking at?
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, I think there was a lot of speculation about that. People were, executives from different teams were calling me yesterday about this to kind of, okay, what was he trying to do here, right? I mean, because the speculation in the industry is still that perhaps there was some prearranged deal with the Dodgers. Obviously, Joe Wolf denied that yesterday. Now kind of suspiciously,
would be against MLB rules,
right? And and the Dodgers were the one team that left $2.5 million in the 2024 international signing period, right? And Wolf talked about how Major League Baseball told them, hey, you know what? Let's delay the signing until the 2025 period so that the Dodgers don't have this advantage and there isn't this perceived, that there isn't, we don't create this perception that something was, unjust here. So maybe, right, so the more cynical people said, hey, maybe this is just a smokescreen. They still have this thing with the Dodgers. He does share representation with Yamamoto. So maybe it was that, or maybe it really is that he, again, Sasaki has really been protected. Again, Ohtani kind of spoke the way like a normal player would in Japan, right? He spoke the day before starts, he spoke the day of his starts, and whenever he hit, he was available to the media after games. Sasaki rarely talks. And part of this, again, is I think he's viewed as kind of, right, because of the trauma over the tsunami and stuff. Mm-hmm. The team was considerate to him. The media was also, I think, very considerate to him, actually, right? I would, counter what Joel said and say, actually, the media was extremely considerate. I don't think he's been asked directly about the tsunami itself. He himself has. Like, people know that this happened, so it's been written. I think most of the quotes about it come from the mother. But maybe it's just that he's from kind of the middle of nowhere, right? He's from the same part of the country that Ohtani's from. It's very rural, not a ton going on out there. Maybe he does actually want a smaller market, right? With a much smaller media presence. Somebody in the game recently threw out Pittsburgh, of all places, as a candidate, wow. Saying that one of their, I guess evidently they have an executive that has a close relationship with the people at the Chivalote Marines, and so somebody told me, like, hey, keep an eye on Pittsburgh. So maybe that's a possibility.
North and South podcast is breaking. Dylan Hernandez reporting.
Something
Pittsburgh
else.
Pirates emerge as favorites for
Roki it's something else that has kind of been in the back of my head, right? And again, we don't know much from Sasaki. We haven't heard too much. But one interesting name that Joe Wolf mentioned yesterday, that some of the pitchers that Sasaki grew up admiring, right? I think Darvish was in there, Matsuzaka. The other one was Tanaka, right? Mm-hmm. And that's interesting because Tanaka pitched in Japan for the Rakuten Golden Eagles, which is a team from the Tohoku region, right? And they won the Japan series, I believe it was 2 years after the tsunami, right? And so it was kind of a huge celebration for that region, and my guess is, from Sasaki's case, Sasaki's instance, this would have still been within 2 years of his father passing away, probably a dark period in his life. And I mean, who knows, right? Maybe Tanaka and this team gave him great joy, and maybe, who knows, maybe that takes him to the Yankees for all we know. Mm-hmm. It was just, I just think that at this point, probably, my guess is if it's one of the big teams, or one of the big Japanese players that he wants to play with, he already knows, right? He just, the way Wolf described him, way too deliberate, right? Now it is a possibility, I think, too, that he's going to try to do what Ohtani did and go to a small team and, like, hey, let me see if I can single-handedly take this non-contender and turn them into champions and what will that do for my legacy, right? And in that case, I do think that there will these interviews and meetings that they have planned for the next couple of weeks. That then in that case, yeah, those could make a difference. But I do think if it's kind of one of the main main suspects, so to speak, that he's probably already decided on what he wants to do there.
As always, this was not planned, but the North and South podcast is the Japanese baseball podcast. That was good. I wasn't even I didn't tell our producer about that part, but that was good. I just dawned on me that we could talk about Roki. Well, actually, Dylan said so before the show, but then it was on my Joe Wolf did say some interesting stuff there that we had not heard, and it's interesting to kind of spin it forward and see what MLB is thinking, see what Japanese media could focus on. Okay, let's go off of that a little bit, but that's fascinating. We'll continue to talk about Roki Sasaki. I continue to believe the Giants want in on this, so this will be very fascinating to see how this all plays out. But we do have a game coming up Thursday. Rams 49ers, essentially like an elimination. I don't think either one of them is going to get in the playoffs, but they could eliminate the other. Rams had played a hell of a game, certainly offensive game, to beat the Bills on Sunday. 49ers played their best game of the year to beat the terrible Bears. But the Bears have been playing people close before that. I give the 49ers some credit for that. I like the Rams in this game just because I think Stafford's red hot and Puka Nacua is almost impossible to cover. How are you looking at this game, Dylan?
Yeah, I think right now, I mean, I think it's pretty simple with the Rams, right? It's if they can protect Stafford, they're going to put up points. Right. I mean, at the beginning of the season, right, there was, the line was all kind of banged up. This last game, I didn't see Stafford under pressure all too much. I think, again, the line did a really good job of protecting him. You give Matthew Stafford time, older quarterback, maybe not the most mobile at this point in his career. But you know what? You give that guy time, he's going to hit his guys, right? Especially with, Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Yeah, I think they're going to be really hard to stop, and I think that this is the type of team that if they sneak into the playoffs, I would be a little bit worried facing them, right? Just right now, again, if that line can stay intact and stay healthy and continue to protect Stafford, I think they could be a dangerous team, and I think they're going to take this game on Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and looked at that game in LA. We both were there week 3. The 49ers outgained the Rams by almost 200 yards. They had that game under control. Their stats were better in every category, and they blow it with special teams plays, and they blow it at the end of the game. They just kind of set the tone for 49ers blowing games that basically took them out of the playoff race. I'm looking, who's the best team in the NFC West right now, Dylan? Like, if you had to say, I mean, counting some of the 49ers injury, I think we can't count. They're not going to, they don't have McCaffrey. They don't have Jordan Mason. They're probably not going to have Isaac Durendo. They're way down on the list at the moment on injuries in a lot of ways. But theoretically, the 49ers are the best team in the NFC West. They're not making the playoffs. I've said this for a while now, but you look at the rosters and you look at the coaching, and you look at what the yards totals, which I do, because I think yards totals are a very kind of balanced way to look at everything. 49ers might be the best team in the division, and they're not going to win. I think the Rams might be the second best team in the division, and they're probably not going to get in either. It's just the way this jumble happened. I think the Rams are going to win, but I think the 49ers are going to play hard. When the 49ers play hard, they got a chance to beat anybody. Who do you think is the best team in the NFC West, Dylan? Just take out everything, just the best team right now.
I mean, I guess right now at this moment, again, I do like the Rams. I think that, let's just say whatever, you throw out all the records, you kind of somehow everybody's magically in the playoffs, who can actually make a Super Bowl run. I would actually say, again, it's the Rams just because if they can protect Stafford, they're going to put up points. Right now, I don't know, you probably can't get there, right, giving up. I know that's a good Bills defense or offense, sorry, but you're not going to, right, giving up 40 points a week. That's not going to quite do it for you. But that offense is going to keep them in every game, I think, right? As long as, again, this is very important. They need to protect them, right? And,
they need to run the ball. They need to run. They haven't run the ball great this season. Right. And I think that's a big part of it is, can they run the ball? And I do think the Rams are right now, factoring in all injuries, are probably the best team in the division. Again, probably not going to make it. But the 49ers if they had McCaffrey or Mason, I think they'd be like if they could run a ball. Like they started to run a ball in Buffalo in the snow, and then McCaffrey got hurt and this and all that. Everything kind of just fell down on them. But the Rams, if they can run the ball and protect him, which is a big part of protecting Stafford,
right.
That Puka Nacua he is somebody to like. You can't. It's very hard to defend that guy. He's so tough. He's like a Debo, right? He's a bigger Debo. Just gets the ball and just bounces off of people. And obviously, Kupp is still, he's still got a lot in his tank too. Defensively, yeah, who knows? I think the 49ers are a better defensive team. I do think that.
I would agree. I agree with that.
That's the one thing I'm looking at is like this Nick Sorensen defensive coordinator. Is he going to keep his job? We've been talking about it all year. He was like a third choice last offseason, and it's not quite the same as the Miko Ryans era, Robert Saleh era, a little bit reminiscent of Steve Wilkes last year, who got fired after going to the Super Bowl. But I think the defense is playing better. I think things are more put together. I'd be curious how that matches up against Stafford. I predicted last week, I should say, that I was going to write Nick Sorensen column out of that game. It didn't turn out that way. Kind of wrote about Shanahan picking out some new leaders to speak to the team and 49ers kind of feeling themselves again. Maybe I'll write a Nick Sorensen column. If the 49ers win tomorrow, I might write a Nick Sorensen column. Like this guy trying to put together the team, trying to rally somewhat for him. And, maybe he's the defense coordinator into the future. I don't think it's going to be Brandon Staley, your guy, Brandon Staley. I don't think it's going to be your guy, Brandon Staley. I'm convinced of that. And I've had a little pushback from the team on any criticism of Sorensen just because of the injuries. And again, they're not going to have Bosa likely again Thursday, but I do think there is some sense that it's going to be, I've got no pushback about saying it's not going to be Brandon Staley. I'll put it that way. And we'll see with Sorensen. He's a guy the players like, and maybe you'll feel that energy on Thursday night.
What has been like Staley's kind of
right? Nobody knows. Like I literally went down last week to ask Shanahan, what have you thought about him? And he said the same things they've been saying since the beginning. He's helped out. He's working with defensive backs. He runs the ball meeting, and that's the turnover, giveaway, takeaway meeting. And that's great. And that's it. Like, it's very bland. There's no passion to it. We see him working with the DBs. He's very chatty to everybody, which is not really a 49er thing that Shanahan loves from his coaches. And nobody says, oh my God, this game plan was so much better because Brandon did this. Like, nobody is saying that. And that's the sign when people bring up a guy's name out of the blue that there's something happening here. And that is not happening with Staley. And in practice, he's only talking to the DBs and then really only talk to the cornerbacks. Now, the cornerbacks have played well. So you give him credit, but is he a position coach? Is that what he is? I wanted a sense of it, and I think the 49ers kind of went, oh, why are you asking about Brandon? Like, there was a little bit of alarm of me asking about Staley at that point. They're a little sensitive to this. But my point to them is you did hire him. He's a former coach. He's a former, renowned defensive coordinator. He has a different scheme, and you brought him in. Like, you brought him in, so we can talk about it. We can discuss what this means. And I don't think it's gelled. My judgment, no one else's, but I don't sense that this has changed anything. I've asked Shanahan, are you doing different things with Staley? I mean, are you things look, schematically any different? And they won't go there. They just won't go there. Oh, Nick Sorensen, it's everybody. Da, da. So my read always is, having covered some of these things before, is if there was a movement towards Staley's influence, we would be hearing about it. They would not be able to hold themselves back talking about it. And that has not happened. I don't think he's going to be the next defensive coordinator. I don't think he's going to be on staff next year, if you just ask me. I'm sure he helps in many ways. I just don't think that, you bring in somebody with that kind of, brand name and it doesn't really impact you. It's not going to be you're not going to have him for a while. Someone else will hire him as defensive coordinator.
Obviously, we usually talk about Japanese baseball. Other thing we talk about, Jim Harbaugh. Yeah. They obviously lost a
tough game.
That was a tough one to lose, man.
But right? The Chiefs are going to win in a weird way. Chargers, listen, their offensive weapons, right, are just limited, really limited. And you got to break a play or two against the Chiefs. You just have to. The Bills did. Like, this is how you beat them if you can. Even then, they could sneak up on you and win at the end. But that defense is good, Dylan. That's a good defense. Yeah. He might lose Jesse Minter, the coordinator, to be a head coach. Maybe he won't. but he'll find another really good defensive coordinator. They've just got to get some offensive weapons. Like they got to go all in on a receiver. Probably need a couple another, a running back or two. But other than that, structurally, Dylan, this is structurally a really solid team.
Yeah. They got obviously Tampa this week. They're kind of hanging around the periphery of the playoff race also. So that'll be kind of interesting to see again, right? And I still feel, that's the thing, right? LA, the city's kind of up for grabs still, right? I know the Rams won a Super Bowl just a couple years ago, but yeah, it was one of those again, right? I think I mentioned this before, but according to some of the surveys they've done around here, only about I think the Rams are the most popular team in town, but only 15% of NFL fans in the city supposedly the Rams are their favorite team. So the city's very much still
the Raiders. The Raiders are still way up there. I know, even after all these horrible seasons.
Niners are very popular down here, right? It's a weird thing that happened, right? A lot of weird stuff can happen in 30 years, and you see a lot of these, Dodger Niner fans, right? Which seems like a kind of a weird mix.
Hilarious. Dylan, we seek to serve them right here. This podcast is seeking to serve. You do not see 49er Dodger fans up here. That you don't really see that here. Or you might see some Laker fans, although the Curry thing kind of blew that away. Right. That's an interesting conversation. It's has the San Francisco sports scene become so powerful because the Warriors and 49ers are so powerful? They are the most powerful. Well, I mean, Warriors is, not quite as big as the Lakers, but they're right there. Like, they're worldwide brand. You have these two worldwide brands now that kind of blow out everything else in this region. I clearly write about them the most. That has incredible appeal, not just in the Bay Area, but across all regions, across countries. So that's been an interesting development in the Bay Area. I'm glad to be here during that. And, the comparison to the LA teams is pretty interesting. So Jim Harbaugh trying to break through all. I heard something like are the Rams more popular in San Diego than they are? I mean, I'm sorry, the Chargers more popular still in San Diego than they are in LA?
I think so.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously people in San Diego are really upset about the whole move, right? Even San Diego transplants who live in LA, right? The team actually moved closer to them so they can go watch it. But a lot of them are still really upset on the fact that, the team got ripped out of that city's hands, right? Because here the truth is they're an afterthought, Now at the same time, you go to the first day of training camp and there are 4,000, 5,000 people out there.
Yeah, right. Well, such a big area.
Right. And that's kind of the thing, right? So you kind of walking around in LA in everyday life, you don't really see Charger fans out in the wild, so to speak. You never see a group of them together. But you go to the stadium every weekend and you know what? There are a ton of them out there. Right. And, it's kind of the same, I know last week, right. I did this from, MLS Cup Media Day. You never see any Galaxy fans out, but you go to the stadium every week and they pack 26,000 in there every week. So they are somewhere, right? There's a lot of people here. So all you need to do is get 1 out of 1,000 and you have a decent fan base.
That's what we are. We go for the 1 out of 1,000. Let's try to go for 1 out of 900. Let's try to get up our demographics a little bit. All right, Dylan, we terribly did not talk about the result of the MLS Cup, but that's great. We'll save that.
You don't want to talk about if Bruce Arena and the Earthquakes could dethrone the now champion Galaxy?
We just did because God knows we always believe in John Fisher's franchises. How about that? They signed Severino to an over the market deal because they're being forced to by the MLBPA.
Yeah, that's
oh my God, look at John Fisher. He's really doing it now. Look at him. Oh, by the way, they're violating the revenue sharing rules by not paying enough. So that is classic Fisher to overpay some outside free agent and not pay his own guys.
Hey, this is, by the way, so my goal is to get you onto soccer. And here's a sneaky good column for you because Bruce Arena cannot keep his mouth shut. He will hate John Fisher. Just give it 6 months to go talk to Bruce, and you guys are going to become best friends.
Okay, well, there you go. Let's mark that. Let's go July. Let's see if that's happened. I predict it might not, but that's a good way to end. That's a very good way in. All right, everybody. It's Dylan Hernandez of the LA Times, the new editorial board chairman of the LA Times, Dylan Hernandez, and that's it for the show today. Thanks, everybody.